everyone, welcome to The Competent Man. I wanted to share some pictures and a little bit of my adventure through Poland and Italy where I recently was. I had the pleasure of being toured around Poland with Parallel Mike. I flew into Wrocław, which actually is pronounced Votslav, and from the airport we went for a run in the Polish mountains. I think this is the third time that I've had the pleasure of meeting somebody online, becoming friends, and then through that, traveling to, in some cases, the other side of the world, like Africa with Francis Hunt, or Northern Canada, or when I was in Poland now with Parallel Mike, and meeting them for the first time in person at the airport. It's kind of an adventure, but I'm very grateful to be able to do some of these adventures. So this is obviously a picture of the Polish mountainside where we were running. It's quite interesting to be able to see a lot of these different places and understand how these different cultures really use the places that they get to be in. So this is a picture of a hut that kind of services this hiking area, and I guess in the winter it's kind of a cross-country skiing area. But these huts there's a decent amount of them apparently, and they serve meals, and they also have rooms to stay if you need to. We ran in an area that was right on let's say the Polish and Czech Republic border. And at some points you can cross right over into the Czech Republic. So this is a picture of the barrier system that keeps you from going into the Czech Republic. And as you can see, it's not very effective. Apparently you can go over, go down to a pub, have a beer, do whatever you want to do. And during COVID, they actually put all these bullards up to keep people from going into the country. It's super effective. Because of the area and the amount of times that this area has changed hands over the years, they put these bullards up to kind of mark the actual borderline. And I thought this was really interesting because if you actually look at what these bullards depict, this used to be Deutschland or Germany at one point. So this is now Poland. And when Poland took it back over, instead of the D for Deutschland, they carved a stem onto it, and now it becomes a P. And on this one, you can actually see it was kind of done haphazardly, and it's kind of crooked off of the D for the stem of the P. But it's really interesting to kind of understand the history of this area. Of course, the other side is now Czech Republic or Czechoslovakia, right? It's not CR, it's just C, and they haven't changed that yet. And you can see these bullards all the way up the trail, kind of showing where the actual border lies. Poland was beautiful. It's a quaint, quiet little country, very pretty. Not a whole lot of traffic and tourists or anything like that. It's interesting to understand that there's not really that many hotels, not really that many restaurants in some of these, let's say, more remote places. And you can tell because it's just a beautiful, quiet, quaint little place. This bunker, the tank, the armaments, this was all part of the Pomeranian position, and it was built before World War II. It was a line of fortifications constructed by Nazi Germany in the Pomeranian Lakeland region of modern northwestern Poland. It was designed as a defensive position to protect German territory in case of an attack from the Second Polish Republic following the territorial changes after World War I. This road ended up taking us. We went to visit what's called the Facility 3001 in Podborosko. So this is actually a nuclear storage and possible launch facility, and it was not marked on any map. Its existence was only known by 12 people in Poland. Facility 3001 in Podborosko was meant to provide nuclear support for the Polish army during the Cold War. This support could have destroyed the world. On February 25th, 1967, the Polish and Soviet governments signed an agreement to increase the army's operational readiness. It was agreed that 3 special facilities would be built by 1 November 1969. Each of the facilities would have 2 special storehouses where nuclear weapons and assembly teams had the necessary auxiliary infrastructure. The parties agreed that the Soviet government would design the special storehouses, provide the special technical equipment necessary to control, assemble, and handle nuclear weapons, and the Polish side was to cover the costs, engineering, and construction of the facility. It was assumed that Plan 3001, which was the name used for the investment plans related to the construction of the 3 complexes, was a top state secret. The construction was carried out from 27 June 1967 to 21 August 1969, just over 2 years. The cost of construction of Facility 3001 in Podbrosko amounted to 68.3 million zloty. In each bunker, there is a loading chamber, which is connected to 4 nuclear weapon storehouses. Each storehouse could accommodate up to 20 warheads and nuclear bombs. It meant that Facility 3001 could have housed 160 nuclear warheads at a time. Each bunker had a backup power system, ventilation, and air conditioning systems. The reacquisition of the complex in Podbrosko by the Polish Army formally took it on 18 September 1990. The facility was managed by the Navy, and after finding Facility 3001 redundant for the Army, in 2005 it was taken over as a unit of temporary accommodations for convicts. And since 2015, the facility has been administered by the Kotosburg District Museum with a view to adapting it to a museum exhibition.
That's cool. Why not let people come in? Yeah, what are you going to do?
This is the road in and out, and as the story goes, apparently, the only way that it was actually found was by an Allied spy plane that found it when they were flying over the Polish forest and realized that there was a 400-meter running track built in the middle of nowhere in the forest, and that's the only way they actually figured out that there was something there to be able to see. We then visited Malbork Castle. The sign that you can see in front here is the state of the castle after the Second World War, after much shelling. The castle was built by the Teutonic Order after the conquest of Old Prussia circa 1222 to 1274. Its main purpose was to strengthen their own control of the area following the Order's 1274 suppression of the Great Prussian Uprising of the Baltic tribes. Malbork became important in the aftermath of the Teutonic Knights' conquest of Gdansk, or Danzig, and eastern Pomerania in 1308. The Grand Master of the Teutonic Knights, Siegfried von Feuchtwangen, who arrived in Marienburg from Venice, undertook the next phase of the fortress's construction. The castle was expanded several times to house the growing number of knights. Soon it became the largest fortified Gothic building in Europe, on a nearly 52-acre site. The castle has several subdivisions and numerous layers of defensive walls. It consists of 3 separate castles: the high, middle, and lower castles, separated by dry moats and towers. The castle once housed approximately 3,000 brothers in arms. The outermost castle walls enclose 52 acres, 4 times the enclosed area of Windsor Castle. The developed part of the property is designated as a World Heritage Site. There's a lot of arms here. There's a big museum of weapons and also currency of the time. Of course, there was a lot of silver and busts, let's say, commemorating leaders of the time. And this is also an exhibit that shows what they used before the time of gold and silver. This is a video of amber that was mined, or not mined, but found and used as a medium of exchange, which was a really important idea in that time because they didn't have the metals at the time, and they ended up using amber as a very important form of currency and medium of exchange. This was the ballroom, and if you can see in the middle, there's actually some inserts, some circular inserts in the floor, which was quite interesting. This was the main area that they would receive guests, especially during the winter. This was the summer ballroom and kind of dining room, and it was built a little bit differently, and you can see there's no round inserts. And this is why the inserts were actually important. So the bottom hearth, you can see, is where they would build a massive fire, and in the bottom they would throw all the wood, and in the top you can see there's a bunch of rocks. So there's actually a chimney system above where the rocks are, and that would vent all the smoke and exhaust out. But when the fire was done burning, the rocks would still be hot, and only once the fire was done burning and the smoke was done being created would they open those inserts in that ballroom. So they had heat from the rocks that still held all of that heat without having the smoke. Pretty interesting how they kind of engineered that stuff. There was a ton of weaponry and armor in this entire place. Some maces, swords, guns, and for somebody that's worked with a lot of metal like myself, it's interesting to kind of think about how they were actually able to build a lot of this stuff. You know, I've worked with obviously a lot of modern tools, modern techniques, and to think about how you would go about building some of this ornate stuff with just a forge and some crude hand tools is pretty wild to think about, you know, the creativity that they had to come up with at this time. Again, some more weapons, some maces, and I just love the ornateness of some of this armor because, again, it just signifies the creativity and the lengths that they would have to go to build some of these things. More of the moat, the dry moats, and I remember visiting a castle in Rome years ago, and they were explaining that the angle of walls like this particular one were meant to be able to be more of a defensive position. So if you see at the top, they would have the ability of archers or, you know, some type of people that were like knights, let's say, that were defending the castle, and because of the angle of the wall, you couldn't get close enough to kind of hide from the range of archers or whoever was defending the castle here. So this is one of the inner courtyards near the cathedral and the kind of church area of the castle. And of course, there was a lot of very symbolic busts and carvings like this one, and this depicts a pelican. In Gothic architecture, the pelican in her piety is a prominent Christian symbol representing Christ's self-sacrificial love and the life-giving power of the Eucharist. This image is derived from medieval bestiaries, and it depicts a mother pelican piercing her own breast to feed her young with her blood, which revives them from death. This act was interpreted as a metaphor for Christ's sacrifice on the cross, where his blood saves humanity from sin and death. This, to me, is really interesting when you can tour a place like this and you don't necessarily think, oh, there's a pelican up there. You know, it doesn't have any significance, but it actually is everything that would take this much work to build obviously ends up having a meaning. There's a couple pictures from Gdansk, where I ended up flying out of, and I flew back to Munich. So now we're driving south from Munich through Austria into a part of Italy called South Tyrol. And this is let's say the northernmost province of current Italy. And South Tyrol, as an administrative entity, originated during the First World War. The Allies promised the area to Italy in the Treaty of London of 1915 as an incentive to enter the war on their side. Until 1918, it was part of the Austro-Hungarian princely county of Tyrol, but this almost completely German-speaking territory was occupied by Italy at the end of the war in November 1918 and was annexed to the Kingdom of Italy in 1919. The province as it exists today was created in 1926 after an administrative reorganization of the Kingdom of Italy, and was incorporated together with the province of Trento into the newly created region of Venetia Tridentina. With the rise of Italian fascism, the new regime made efforts to bring forward the Italianization of South Tyrol. The German language was banished from public service, German teaching was officially forbidden, and German newspapers were censored, with the exception of the fascistic Alpenzeitung. The regime also favored immigration from other Italian regions. The subsequent alliance between Adolf Hitler and Benito Mussolini declared that South Tyrol would not follow the destiny of Austria, which had been annexed by Nazi Germany. Instead, the dictators agreed that the German-speaking population be transferred to German-ruled territory or dispersed around Italy. But the outbreak of the Second World War prevented them from fully carrying out their plans. Every citizen was given the choice to give up their German cultural identity and stay in fascist Italy, or to leave their homeland for Nazi Germany to retain their cultural identity. This resulted in the division of South Tyrolese families. In this tense relationship for the population, Walter Caldonazzi from the Mals was part of the resistance group around the priest Heinrich Meyer, and he passed plans and information about the production facilities for V-1, V-2 rockets, Tiger tanks, Messerschmitts, and other aircrafts to the Allies. The group planned for an independent Austria with a monarchical form of government after the war, which would include Austria and Bavaria in South Tyrol. In 1943, when the Italian government signed an armistice with the Allies, the region was occupied by Nazi Germany, which reorganized as the operation zone of the Alpine foothills and put it under the administration of Gauleiter Franz Hofer. The region was de facto annexed by the German Reich with the addition of the province of Belluno until the end of the war. Italian rule was restored in 1945 as the Nazi regime ended. And interestingly, when you're in this area, every sign and every person basically speaks both Italian and German, preferably German in a lot of cases, and some regional dialects as well. We then had the chance to visit the Prattau copper mine. The original copper vein, was originally discovered during the Bronze Age. It then was mined from 1400 up until the early 1970s, and at some points there were 1,200 men employed by the mine, 400 inside and up to 800 400 outside and up to 800 inside. This depicts the main tunnel in the bottommost mine shaft, the most modern mine shaft. And as we progressed through the tunnel, there were these plaques. And this kind of denoted where they were getting to at certain points in time. The rock apparently here is quite hard, and each one of these plaques denoted a particular point of measurement, let's say, for the mine. In this particular mine, this mine measurement was equivalent to a unit of 1.65 meters or 5.4 feet, which ended up being the progress of work that would be done in a 21-day shift for a crew of men. So basically a month's worth of work is the progress that they would make. And back when they did this all by hand, it was equivalent to 5.4 feet of progress in a month of work. Of course, this tunnel, as we went through it, progressed a lot quicker with the advent of gunpowder. Once gunpowder was helped to or invented, you could see the mine just accelerated exponentially. This was some of the winch works or hoist works that were put in there in the 60s, and it's already that rusty. So that stuff hasn't been there that long.
Yeah, of course.
This is the bottommost sump, and we're dropping rocks into it to really show how far it is from where we're standing into the water below.
Sometimes I
the rocks take about 3 to 4 seconds to actually hit the water, and if they turned the pumps off, I think within 3 or 4 days this would fill up and the tunnel would start to flood. Of course, this is, again, with the modern advent of gunpowder and dynamite, this is loading charges into the walls, drilling into the walls. And they would also show us different ideas or different portions of time where different mining techniques were used, like this one where they're, mining by hand. It was a really interesting mine to show you just the different eras of time that it went through. This is a pool of water that's so clear in the mine that it's reflecting the roof perfectly. You actually can't see the bottom of the pool. You're seeing the perfect reflection of the ceiling and not that of the pool, or not that of the bottom of the pool. Different areas of the mine, of course, have caved in, and it's really interesting to see the different types of wood and types of shoring techniques that they used throughout time.
Everything here. Water, stone, and a lighter. And nothing. Wow.
So this video shows us carbide, which the miners used to light their lamps and have working light inside the mine at different points in time, or before modern lighting was invented. This was a type of material that was baked in a kiln, and then once it was baked, you would add water to it, and acetylene gas would pour out from the reaction between the water and the carbide, and that's what they would light their way with. And if anybody has been around burning acetylene, it's a horrible smell. I again, being a welder, I worked with it for a lot of years, and I couldn't imagine having that as your main source of light. This is, again, more pictures of the valley, and just an absolutely picturesque, beautiful place. I couldn't imagine, back in the day, exploring this place in a pair of leather boots and, having to mine in areas like that. Of course, Italy is known for unbelievable food, and this trip was no exception. I did a trip to Rome and Florence about 10 years ago and was blown away by the quality of the food. And of course, this trip was no exception either. We had ended up getting a decent amount of snow on one of the days, and it made for an even more picturesque and beautiful area. This was a sauna and cold plunge that I had to take part in during my stay there, and it just added to the awesome, awesomeness of the trip. This is the next tunnel up. We went on a hike maybe 2 days after we did the mine tour, and this is the next mine shaft above the most modern mine shaft that would access the ore vein. And this wall was built by hand out of rock, and the reason it was built was because they had a problem with avalanches coming down and basically blocking the entrance to the mine shaft and the area where they were actually sorting all of the ore. And so they built this wall that's 1,500 meters long, up to 30 feet tall in some areas, and 10 to 15 feet thick. I couldn't imagine building that wall nowadays just by hand. It's just an unbelievable feat. We then traveled to a valley called Val Gardenia. It's kind of a little ski town in the winter and hiking and mountain biking in the summer. Another absolute picturesque, beautiful place in the Dolomites, and just a beautiful way to kind of wrap up a really interesting trip. Hope you guys liked a little bit of my adventure in Italy, and let me know what you think and where I should visit next.